To those who may watch this, may this bring you clarity, and through clarity, tremendous comfort in seeing the true light of who you are. I wanted to talk a little bit about observing with detachment, because that was something that was super difficult for me. It really took me a very long time to be able to completely understand what that meant. And for some reason, the mind would always get involved, The mind always starts to get involved because you're observing with detachment, but because of the deepness of that conditioning, it's very difficult to discern what is real and what is not in terms of what the mind is saying, because the mind is extremely deceitful. And please understand this. The mind has never had an original thought. What do I mean by that? Well, thought is based on language, right? So you hear a voice, you hear a language, you're speaking to yourself. Oh, that was a good job. Oh, why did you do that? Whatever. Everybody does that. But what is language made out of? It's concepts. Language is, if you look at the phonetics, the phonology, if you go into all of that, the linguistics of it, there are sounds put together that, when put together, create concepts. Concepts are stories. Stories have had a tremendous impact upon human society ever since, I think about the Vikings with the sagas, and even way before that, of course. There was always indigenous people often had stories, and that was a form of transmission. You were transmitting your history through stories, and the more elaborate the story, the better people, for some reason, would remember it. So language is conditioned. That means that as a result of its entire foundation being conditioned, whatever comes from that is going to be, by virtue of its original conditioning, a form of conditioning as well, because we are fully conceptual. By the time we reach a certain age in our lives, the world is seen totally through concepts, and the reason it's kept alive is through thinking, which for many people it's non-stop. How exhausting that is. I know for me it was extremely exhausting. And there's some people, it's amazing that they don't even get a little break, and they're scared to get that little silent, that little break. They try to avoid it as much as possible by playing music or turning on, doing social media, whatever, as a distraction for that silence. Little do they know the beauty of that silence. Little do they know that silence is them. And that there's so much love, there's so much peace, there's so much tranquility, there's so much freedom. It's boundless and it is eternal, that silence. Imagine discovering something like that. Imagine discovering something that's boundless, that's eternal, that is fundamentally you. Talk about bliss, right? Isn't that amazing? But that's the truth. And that's why it's so blissful from that perspective. But it's nothing you think about. Once you realize the truth, you become the truth. You become everything and nothing. Because you lose your idea of form, you lose your idea of who you are. I don't refer to myself as the person that I thought I was. But now consider that. Pandora's box has been open. The person that you thought you were is always changing, right? Like, if you look at your history and your own self-interpretation, over time you changed your mind about many things, right? I'm sure that there have been some instances where 20 years ago, 10 years ago, depending how old you are, you thought about something in a very different way, or maybe even slightly different. In fact, every single minute, every single day, every single hour, our thoughts change. They are not constant. Have you noticed that? They're absolutely not. They're always fluctuating. And they typically go from polarities of positivity, negativity, praise, self-praise, but it's always about that little me that we've created through language and conditioning, and that what is being propped up by society, modern day society. It's really fascinating. So I did go on a huge tangent, but I'm just speaking from my heart, and I hope that transmission is felt and As a result of that, it's fully authentic. It's not thought. There's just direct transmission from the source, from you. This is for you. This is you doing something for you. I know it's hard to understand that now, but there is only awareness. And within awareness, everything that appears in your awareness, right? Have you contemplated that? Everything that has ever appeared has appeared in your awareness, but has not been your awareness. It appears in your awareness, right? But consider this. Everything that you can observe cannot be you, right? If you are observing something, how can you be what you observe? Let me give you an example of thoughts, and I hope what I'm about to tell you will help you, because this really helped me. When I, through stories and where I put my belief and attention is a powerful tool. Belief is a powerful tool. These are very important. Remember that, belief and attention. When I put my attention and my belief in the story that I was sad or depressed, that was a story. At the time I didn't realize it. I was playing the character in that story. I was in that movie. I thought I was the character in the movie, which was ridiculous because it's like reading a book and imagining a character in a book coming to life and saying, hey, I don't like this author. I don't like what this author is doing. That's how it is. You are the author, you are the character, you're the book, and you're the story. You're making it all up. It's amazing, really. And some of you listening to this know that. Some of you don't. And again, this is just my perspective. This is not a video to try to prove anything whatsoever. In fact, that would do it injustice to the video if I were to prove something, because then I would bring you back into the mental realm, into concepts again, and that would just go on down a spiraling hamster wheel. I mean, we would not get anywhere. So observe with detachment. That means don't start getting attached, emotionally attached. Don't start creating stories. Just let whatever is occurring, don't even give it that much attention. Try to ignore it if you can. That's actually a very powerful thing, is just to be able to ignore it. There came one point in my practice where that's what I had to do, because I was always playing around with the idea of observing. So am I observing? And I was always saying, am I doing it right? And you see, that controller, that's another thing that disappears when you wake up, is the person that's controlling everything, because there is nobody controlling anything. That controller, the one who's saying, I have to do this, I have to do that, that's not real. That's a story, that's a concept. You are not a concept. Reality is not a concept. If a reality would be a concept, it would be something completely permanent, but there's no concept that is permanent. They have beginnings and ends. So back to the thought. And this will help me. I hope it helps you. So I had the thought that I was very sad because of certain life circumstances. Again, we try to seek our happiness outside, and that will never be found permanently. It's always inside. And then I started to realize and started to put into practice observing with detachment. And I observed the story, because the sadness came from a thought. And the thought created the emotion. And then the emotion fed the thought, and it created that perpetual machine, back and forth, back and forth. And that's what the times you go like, oh, I can't, it's like too much, right? I'm sure you've had these moments where it's like you just can't stand your thoughts anymore. You just feel so stressed out, and you feel so anxious about it. And then you're stressed out that you feel anxious, and then you're anxious that you're stressed. It's like, it's relentless, right? And I say this with a lot of passion and conviction because I suffered a lot because of my mind. And I know so many people who have as well. And I don't want anybody watching this. I hope this helps you. I really do. So let's go back to that thought again. You're observing the thought that I am sad. Now, before the thought arises, you're here, you're present, correct? Okay. So you're present, you're fully aware. In fact, you're fully aware the whole time. But then as you are present, you start to think about it. The thought just pops up, right? Thoughts pop out of nowhere. You notice that? They just pop up. Try to think what your next thought's going to be. That's something you can't do for a long time. And as the thought pops up, the thought creates an emotion. Typically, it's based on something in the past, something in the future. In my case, it was on the past. I was suffering what I was experiencing, and I had created that experience. So I was suffering what I was creating. And once you really realize that, you see how you could have, at that time, had I known or had I come to this deep realization, it would have been completely different. So when you see that thought coming by, you observe it, and there will come a point where that thought, I am sad, will be gone, right? I mean, have you ever had a thought that's been 24 hours persistent for your entire life? There are gaps, thoughts are changing the whole time, and then the nuance of the thought, the intensity of the thought also. So there's every aspect of the thought is always changing like a wave, right? So when the thought is gone, I am sad, while the thought I am sad is here though, you feel that is you, right? But then when the thought is gone, you are present. You're still here, but the thought is gone. Like if I ask you 2 weeks ago at 2 p.m., what were you thinking? You don't remember. Maybe it was important then, but now it's gone, right? So if you had been the thought, when the thought goes, you would not be here to talk about it. So what happens is you actually witnessed the thought. You were here before the thought arrived, you were here during the thought, and you're here after the thought. And now you're talking about the thought. So that means you observed it. That means you witnessed it. Otherwise, you would not be able to talk about it, and you cannot be what you observe. I hope this helps. Bless you.